Hello, this is Russell Dobular filling in for Jimmy Dore, who's going to be on the road very shortly. We have an amazing guest lineup today, starting off with Syed Mohammed Marandi. He's a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran, and he's a political analyst known for his critiques of Western media and culture, and has appeared as a commentator on international news networks such as Al Jazeera and BBC. Born in the U.S., he returned to Iran at the age of 13 and later fought in the Iran-Iraq War. Let's give a very warm welcome to Professor Marandi. Professor Marandi, welcome.
Hi, Russell. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much for making it during what I'm sure is a very trying time in your country.
It is indeed.
The IRGC just released a video today of kind of rocket launches. I want to take a look at that, get your thoughts on this. All right. Now, personally, I like the Lego videos better, but that was very impressive. Now, does Iran believe that it can defeat the U.S. militarily? And why is Iran the only country in the region that is willing to confront the United States and Israel? I think that's very confusing for people. Why none of the other countries will do this? Why Iran stands alone?
Yes, I think the Iranians believe that they can defeat the United States or outlast the United States. Uh, the Iranians have been preparing themselves for this war for decades. They always believed that at some point the United States will invade the country. And since the end of the uh, Iraq-Iran war, where Saddam Hussein invaded Iran with U.S. Encouragement, the Iranians had been preparing. But after 9/11, the Iranians were quite confident that the United States at some point would attack. So after 9/11, they've been working much harder and more swiftly to develop underground missile bases, underground drone bases, to develop Iranian indigenous technology for missiles, drones, and other weapon systems. And that's why they were able to uh, effectively defeat the Israeli regime in the 12-day war. Of course, the Americans were supporting the Israelis. And in the 40-day war, the Ramadan war that we had 4 months ago, I think it's fair to say that Iran definitely won the war. It doesn't mean that the United States didn't hurt Iran or damage Iran's critical infrastructure. In fact, just a couple of hours ago, apparently the Americans struck uh, uh, a hospital, a children's cancer hospital in the city
Oh,
of
God.
Ahvaz. And so, damage is being done every day. But for the Iranians, this is a war for survival. For the Americans, it's a war of choice.
Right.
And therefore, the incentive for the Iranians to fight is much higher. And you've seen the funerals in Iran for Ayatollah Khamenei, and they were in the millions. Some of our mutual friends were in Tehran and perhaps in the other
Yes.
cities. I don't know if they went there, and in Iraq as well. So it's clear where public opinion stands, and the armed forces have, of course, been during the last few nights been hitting back hard, and during the day. No one wants war, but it's been imposed upon the country. We were, as you know, and I know your viewers are very politically aware, but before the 12-day war, we were negotiating, and then it turned out that the whole negotiation process was just a deception. Trump and Netanyahu were planning a war. And before this war, 4.5 months ago or so, we were negotiating with the United States in Oman, and there was progress. The foreign minister of Oman went to the United States, and then they launched the war. So it's not as if the Iranians are seeking war or they love war, but they have to fight this war because they know that the objective is the destruction of Iran, to turn Iran into another Syria or another Libya. And why is it that no one else is willing to stand up to the United States and the Israeli regime? Many of these countries are just proxies. Their leaders, um, they have been installed and controlled by the United States for many decades. They spend much of their time in the United States. Their families spend much of their time in the United States. That's where they keep their money. Uh, that's where they have their mansions. That's where they spend their vacations. The Americans have a lot of dirt on these people. We've seen quite a few of these people and their names in the Epstein files. Senior Emirati leaders, for example, but others too. Turkey, unfortunately, despite the fact that its population is very supportive of the Palestinian cause, but throughout this genocide, the Turkish government has been transporting oil to Netanyahu, and has been Trump calls Mr. Erdogan very faithful to himself. So, but public opinion across the region is with Iran, despite the fact that for years, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Erdogan, and others, the Qataris have been trying to create religious divide, sectarian divide, racial divide between Iran and everyone else. But public opinion is with Iran. People now see through all that propaganda. And views of Iran have evolved a lot. I mean, in the past, when I would be on shows like yours or shows of other friends, the general skepticism towards Iran back then was much greater because of the propaganda. But a lot of people are now seeing through the propaganda. They don't see Iran as this evil, backward, medieval land where you have mad mullahs running around and gays being thrown off the top of buildings and women being beaten in the afternoon and children being, I don't know, beaten in the evenings. And it's a house of cards that's about to fall. I think the war did a lot to dispel the propaganda about Iran being a house of cards. The funerals did a lot to show that Iran is very different from what is depicted in what it's being depicted as being in the West. And I think a lot of people across the world have been asking themselves, well, if Iran is really that bad and that evil, why is it that the Iranians and their allies are opposing genocide in Gaza and everyone else is either indifferent or complicit? And I think a lot of people are actually learning about, well, and thanks to some of our friends to a degree, they're learning about the fact that Iran has Jews, Iran has synagogues. In fact, the Israelis bombed the synagogue in Tehran. A couple of our mutual friends have visited that synagogue. And so views have evolved. And I think that despite the hardship of war, I don't want to say good has come out of it, but there have been positive developments too. And that is that I think awareness across the region and across the world has increased.
So J.D. Vance went on Joe Rogan. Let me set this up, actually. There's Russell Dobler filling in for Jimmy Dore here with Professor Marandi, our friend of the show. We're very glad to see safe sound, looking very well. J.D. Vance went on Joe Rogan and laid out his version of why this war seemingly keeps stopping and starting and stopping and starting. So this was his version of events.
What's going on with Iran where it seems like the president keeps saying that a deal's reached, negotiations have been successful, and then it all falls apart and we start bombing them again?
Yeah, so how long do we have here? Because this is a long conversation.
As much time as you need.
So I have to explain a couple of things in the background so you sort of fully appreciate, people fully appreciate what's going on here. So number one, it's a bit of a simplification, but you have two elements within the Iranian system. You have, and you sometimes hear hawkish Americans say this, that they're all crazy people. They want to bring about, the 12th Imam and the apocalypse and all that stuff. Right. There are people in Iran who believe that. They're also pragmatists. You've got the crazy people, you've got the pragmatists, okay? So when we struck this MOU, and really what the MOU says, and it was misrepresented more than almost anything that I've ever worked on in public life. What it says is Iran is going to open the Strait of Hormuz, the violence is going to stop, and then we're going to negotiate to see if we can come to a broader deal on the long-term nuclear issue. That's what we wanted. And what the Iranians wanted, of course, was long-term economic and sanctions relief. Now, here's the problem with where we are right now. And I guess my summary view, Joe, is that I, of course, can't predict the future. I don't know exactly where this is going to go. But I think fundamentally we are on the right trajectory. It's just going to be really messy, and there's going to be a lot of stuff starts. So what happens? The first week after we sign the MOU, we get 20 million barrels a day of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's what it was before the war. The price of oil comes way down. And there are elements, the hardliners in the Iranian system kind of freak out a little bit. They're like, oh shit, did we just give away our major leverage point? Screw nuclear weapons, we just gave away the so in this MOU. And so there was this kind of freak out in their system. So they shot at a couple. We responded. I think that's entirely appropriate, of course. If they're going to shoot at ships, we're going to shoot at the people who are shooting at the ships or the facilities that they're using to shoot at ships. So that happens. Okay, and then the Iranians are like, oh, no, fine. You're right. We shouldn't have been shooting at ships. So then they come back to the table. And there's a few more days of negotiation. And then the phase that they're in right now is the hardliners have really, really reacted strongly to all the oil that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. And they've basically said, we're going to try to shut this thing down. We're scared about losing our leverage. Now, the pragmatists in their system are saying this was a mistake. Let's keep on talking. And again, do ultimately going to shake out? Of course I don't. But what we're doing is a delicate diplomatic dance where we're using economic leverage points. We're using carrots and sticks, trying to talk to the pragmatists. And then, of course, when they commit acts of violence, we're responding to it. And all those things are happening simultaneously to get us on a better trajectory. Now, that said, yes, right now they're shooting right now. Last night they shot at some ships. But with all that said, is their nuclear program still destroyed? Yes. Are the straits not necessarily fully pre-war traffic, but are we getting enough oil and gas out of the Strait of Hormuz to prevent a worldwide energy crisis? Yes. And all of these things are happening in the context of the broader negotiation over the nuclear program. You never know where this is ultimately going to end up, but that's where we are.
Okay, I could see you holding back laughter a couple times during that. So do you have a response to that? I know there's a lot there. Take your time.
Well, there are a few things. One is that this whole pragmatic, crazy divide, and one group does something and another group does something else. I mean, if Iran is so chaotic and everyone does their own thing, it's amazing how they won the war and they won the siege warfare and they got the MOU, the negotiated deal, with all that chaos. I mean, no country can survive where you have different factions doing different things, and one says, this is wrong, but the other is firing missiles. That's nonsense. What happened basically was that, first of all, we haven't had negotiations with Americans. I mean, that hasn't existed. And I think Vance, and I can't say with confidence, but Vance, of course, he's the vice president. He can't say that Trump is talking nonsense.
Mm.
Vance has his own worldview. I assume that because of what I've heard from Tucker Carlson on his show, that the relationship between him and Tucker Carlson is different from that of Trump with Tucker Carlson. So Vance, on the other hand, therefore, probably has a different worldview than that of Trump and some of the people around Trump. So he wants to have both. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. On the one hand, he wants to say that I'm with Trump and what we're doing is right. But when he tries to describe it, it doesn't make sense. You have this faction firing missiles, and this other faction says, we shouldn't be firing these missiles, and sorry, and that's just nonsense. But he wants, I think, the process to continue, because probably he understands that the war is not going to get the United States to a good place. So he's trying to say, let's find a negotiated solution. The fact is that the United States engaged in this war with the Israeli regime. It was unprovoked and all that. Then, after the ceasefire, the siege warfare began, basically because the United States refused to implement the ceasefire deal, which included Lebanon, and Netanyahu refused. He carpet bombed Beirut. So we had a 2 month, 2 months or so, more than 2 months of siege warfare. Then we had the MOU, and there were some differences between the two sides. We weren't getting to the deal, and then Netanyahu bombed Beirut. Iran was about to fire missiles at Israel. My understanding, this is my interpretation, Trump was afraid that if Iran and the Israeli regime got into a warfare, that the deal would be set back. So he gave the concessions that the Iranians wanted, and the deal was signed. But he had no intention of carrying out the deal. This is my opinion. And in Iran, no, the leaders and the elites and the analysts, I don't know anyone who believed that the United States was going to carry out the deal. And why was Trump insistent on having the deal? Because he himself admitted that we only had 4 weeks of reserves left, oil reserves, energy reserves. And he spoke of Herbert Hoover and the Great Depression, and he doesn't want to see that happen. And so we are where we are. But since Trump did not want to implement the deal, everyone was attacking him for it, he began to undermine it step by step. He effectively refused to carry out any of his obligations except for one, and that was the siege. Why? Because, as Vance said, he wanted the oil to come out.
Right.
So he wanted the oil to come out. He removed the siege, but everything else he violated. He was supposed to hand over Iran's stolen assets. He refused. He was supposed to force the Israeli regime to leave Lebanon and to stop the killing. He refused. He was supposed to remove sanctions on Iran's energy exports. He lifted them and then restated them after just a few days. He, according to the deal, is not allowed to threaten Iranian leaders or the Iranian people. He did that repeatedly. And he expanded the sanctions regime, a violation of the deal. And then, and this is where we get to what Vance was saying, during the 2-month period of the MOU, Iran was supposed to control the Strait of Hormuz and facilitate the normalization of the trade or the shipping that goes through the strait. So what did the Americans do? And there's nothing in Article 5, which has to do with this, about Americans intruding and getting involved in the strait. So the Americans come in and they set up their own corridor for ships, which goes against Article 5. I mean, people can see it, it's online. They set up this corridor. The Iranians tell the Americans, this is a violation. We're supposed to be the side that's in charge. The Americans ignore them. And then those countries that helped the Americans launch the war against Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, they started sending their ships through the American corridor. Iran, for a number of days, complained, but did nothing serious about it. Then finally, the Iranians said enough is enough. They hit 3 ships, and then the Americans started. They hit ships, and then the Americans started hitting Iran, which was another violation, attacking Iran. So basically, what Trump did was that he was violating all of his commitments, and then he wanted to control the Strait of Hormuz too, and undermine Iran's authority. And Iran was not going to have that, because Iran knew that, well, if he doesn't abide by his commitments, and then he takes control of the Strait of Hormuz, he effectively wins. So the Iranians began to hit back, and now the Americans are engaging in this war. But the Americans had been preparing for this, because ever since the ceasefire, they brought in a lot of equipment for ground warfare, and they've kept all their planes, almost all of their planes in place. I don't know if every single one is here, but all of their assets are in the region. But the Iranians also, they were preparing themselves since the ceasefire. And also the Iranians did something that I think was very important. And that was that as soon as the MOU was signed, as I said, the Iranians knew that Trump would not abide by his commitments. But they immediately began to export large quantities of oil, because Iran had a lot of tankers in the Persian Gulf, which were full of oil, but couldn't leave because of the siege. So they sent a lot of oil, quickly imported essential goods, so that when the Americans reimpose the siege, which is illegal because it's directed at ordinary people, they would be prepared. So Iran is more prepared now than it was before the MOU, because of its exports and because of its imports. And now we're back to war.
Do you think Trump actually has freedom of action? Because you get the sense he talks about being Herbert Hoover. You get the sense that he wants to end this desperately, but it seems like the Israelis simply will not allow him, now that he put his foot in this trap, to get it out. Now that he's in, he can't get out. They're going to continue conditions like what they're doing in Lebanon that are just going to make peace impossible. Of course, you mentioned Epstein. A lot of people think there's compromise. We don't know, but his behavior is so inconsistent in regards to how he deals with Israel versus everybody else. It suggests there might be something to it. But even without that, the Israelis continue to do things that the Iranians simply cannot accept. Do you think that in the end, Trump has the freedom to end this war? Can he?
I don't know the answer to that question, obviously, and I would like to ask you. But the way I see it is that going back to before the war, when Tucker Carlson met Trump and he spoke with him and told him why this was a big mistake, and he said Trump agreed with him. And so it was clear that Trump knew that this was not a good idea.
Right.
But he did it anyway. So that means that it was imposed upon him. Now, whether it's because he's done terrible things and they have footage of him doing it, I don't know. Whether he's so deeply indebted to the oligarchy, the Zionist oligarchy, the Epstein class, I don't know. But it's very difficult to believe that someone who says this is a bad idea would just do it anyway. It doesn't make sense. Now, here's where, for me, it becomes a bit more complicated. More recently, and also, if we go back to Joe Kent's resignation letter, which was submitted right after the war started, in that letter he said Iran is not developing a nuclear weapon, Iran's not a threat to the United States, and he basically said that this war is because of the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime. So that is the reason. I mean, you can't go much higher than Joe Kent at that time in intelligence. So obviously, that was the reason. And today, there's no reason to think that the reason behind the war suddenly disappeared. So I would imagine that it is the Israeli regime and the Zionist lobby. Now, what becomes, I think, a bit the question that comes up for me is that why is it that Trump and Netanyahu Trump has been criticizing Netanyahu so severely then? And some would say, well, this is good cop, bad cop. I don't think so, because the way in which Trump has attacked Netanyahu on a number of occasions were not good for Netanyahu, because he humiliated him and weakened his position, I think. So I think that there are a number of things happening, probably. And correct me if you think I'm wrong. One is that I think that perhaps even in the Zionist lobby, there are differing factions. Some of them believe that this war is not going well, and if the United States goes into a Great Depression, or a major recession, that this will not be good for them, the Israeli firsters in the United States. And so it's best to find a solution. And so I think some of them say, no, we need to continue this war with the Iranians. Who cares what happens to the United States? Who cares what happens to the global economy? And they're, I think, firmly behind war, firmly behind Netanyahu. And then another faction, probably, as I said, the ones who are worried about where this is going to take the economy, they are probably becoming anti-Netanyahu, and they probably want him to lose the election, the election that's coming up, which is close, just like the midterms in the United States. And that's why Trump is attacking Netanyahu. So Trump could be compromised, but at the same time, in some sort of conflict with Netanyahu, the individual, at the same time. I don't know if
I,
that makes sense.
I think when we see Trump have these outbursts, I think it's a reflection of an animal in a trap thrashing around.
I
I
agree.
I think sometimes it just comes out because look at how Trump deals with everybody else. It doesn't. It's got to chafe to have to be this subservient. And when Netanyahu keeps putting him in a position that is so damaging to his political project and to his legacy and to his reputation, in terms of some of the Zionists not liking Netanyahu, yeah, I think some of them realize this is very bad for PR. He's the worst thing to have happened to our project in a long time. Not that they don't share his goals, but he's making those goals more difficult to attain because he's destroying the reputation of Israel. He's destroying. I can tell you, Professor, I have never in my life seen the Israeli state questioned in America like it is now. Never. Never. When I was growing up, nobody would question Israel in any way. It was taken as gospel that Israel was this heroic triumph of an oppressed people and that the Arab states around them were savages, that they were savages, they were Nazis, they were barbaric. And you see the Zionists try to push that even now and with increasing frustration because it's not working the way that it used to. So yes, there I think there are some Zionists who realize, we had a good thing going and they've just revealed too much now, and it's going to be very difficult, impossible really to ever go back to that narrative. Nobody really questioned that narrative after October 7th. They can't really sell it anymore. But here's an explanation that came from Drop Site. There's Russell Dobular filling in for Jimmy Dore with our friend Professor Marandi, who is very heroically in the middle of the night appearing on this show. What time is it over there?
It is 2:07 a.m.
2:07. Wow. Well, we appreciate you being here. All right, so this just came from Drop Site. There's a possible explanation for some of what we've been talking about. During the U.S.-Iran talks in Lake Lucerne, Switzerland in late June, Iranian negotiators sent a private message to Vice President J.D. Vance through an intermediary. The Iranians warned Vance that the continued presence of President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and son-in-law Jared Kushner would undermine the chance of turning the June 17th framework into an enduring deal, a senior Iranian official told DropSite. In the private message, according to the Iranian official, Iran conveyed to Vance that the pair were more interested in exploiting insider knowledge of the negotiations to profit in financial markets than they were in reaching a deal. Iranian negotiators also expressed concern about repeated leaks from Kushner to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A U.S. official told Axios that since the negotiations began, Witkoff and Kushner talk almost every day to Netanyahu and the head of Mossad. So could this be the reason Trump is being controlled and ill-advised by his own son-in-law and friend who he's put in this position of envoy? There's been some reporting that the leadership in Iran predicts what Trump's going to do based on the opening and closing of the financial markets. Is that some of what's going on here?
Well, I think the Iranians know that Kushner, Witkoff, and Trump's kids are making a lot of money in the Persian Gulf. And they have been milking these Arab regimes since Trump returned to power. And we know that there's insider trading, and we know that Trump has been making huge amounts of money himself since he became president. So this does make sense. And you're right. I mean, I think it's pretty well known by now that a lot of the things that Trump says and does coincides with the opening of markets, or right before markets open and right before markets close. And we've seen a lot of insider trading, especially using Axios. So on a number of occasions, Axios put out completely fabricated stories, and then the price of oil would just suddenly drop, and
Right.
people would make huge amounts of money, and then the story would, after a few days, go away. So Axios is a complete tool, and actually one of the reasons why I thought maybe the conflict between Trump and Netanyahu, and I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I agree with everything that you say, but one reason why I think maybe some within the Zionist elites, maybe with this idea of attacking Netanyahu, is that Axios itself published one of the hardest hitting and perhaps the first hard-hitting critique that Trump had of Netanyahu when it published the conversation between Trump and Netanyahu on the phone, when Trump said, "Everyone hates Israel, everyone hates you, and you're crazy," or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's
Yeah.
2:11 a.m. So, but in any case,
Fair enough.
so I don't know, but I agree
Yeah,
that
so,
he's
some
like,
profanity,
he's
called them crazy, something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Now you mentioned the funeral that our friend, there's Russell Dobler filling in for Jimmy Dore with Professor Marandi. Now you mentioned the funeral, which Max Blumenthal attended, and they kindly seized his devices when he got back here to the United States, treated to the hospitality of the state when he got back. So here's a little bit of that funeral, which I think shocked a lot of Americans because it's so completely contradicted what we're told about Iran and the relationship between the people and the government. Now, I was fortunate enough to just spend 5 weeks in China, which is also a place where we're told the people absolutely hate the government. And there's a show in Chongqing called 1949 that packs multiple performances a day, and it's a performance about the triumph of the revolution. And I saw that and I said, you can't force people to go buy tickets to a show. They're choosing to go to this show multiple times a day. It's been running for years. So you're not going to get people who hate the government to keep going to see a show that celebrates the revolution that put this government in power. I thought something similar watching this funeral. You can't, nobody made millions of people go to this funeral. I think the question a lot of people in the West might have is that support for the government, or is it defiance of the US that would bring all these people out, or is it both?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing about China, the city that you visited, I think itself is reflective of why people participated in the show. And if you compare Chongqing, which is, I think, a city of 31 million people, in central China. It's not one of the cities that you normally hear about. It's not Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou. But this,
You know who it's very popular with? Younger people who see images online. Like
right?
it's not in
Yes,
that usual tourist circuit.
right, right. Yes, like the rooftop, which yeah,
Right,
I
with
know
the
what you mean.
train
But
going through and yeah.
exactly, exactly. So that city is really beautiful
Yeah.
and very developed and very clean. And it is what the United States was 50 years ago.
Yes.
Uh, when I was there as a child, and I remember when I went for the first time, like maybe I was 10 years old, 11 years old. I don't remember exactly, but I went and through the Lincoln Tunnel. And back then, it
Mm,
was supposed to be like the highest technology, the newest technology.
right.
China is today what the United States was 45, 50 years ago.
Exactly.
And so when you can live a much better life in China than in the United States, when you go to a good restaurant in the United States and in China, it costs like a fraction of what it costs in the United States, and the list goes on. Well, there's a reason why people would be interested in going to a show and to pay for it and to sit there, and despite it being very different from what pundits in Washington would like people in China to think, or what they would like the world to think about China.
Right.
So in Iran, it's I think even more different. And I've always said, and you and I have spoke about Iran and the United States before. Iran has always had the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran has always had a high degree of public legitimacy, the state. And the polls show that. Polls carried out by like uh, there's a university in the United States that carries out regular polls in Iran. I forgot what it was. Anyway, it's 2 in the morning. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right.
uh, and they're polling companies in Iran that do regular polls, both privately owned and uh, public owned pollsters work on this and on other issues, private sector businesses, but also on public opinion with regards to issues of the day. There's always been a high Maryland, the University of Maryland. There's always been a high degree of legitimacy in the eyes of Iranians with regards to the state. And uh, all of that doesn't mean people are not critical of the state. The very same people in that footage that you saw, and that's just a small fraction of the crowd.
Mm,
I mean, they fly with helicopters over it. It's just extraordinary. It goes on for many miles,
mm,
and those same people, if you speak to them, like he's at they're taxi drivers, they are hospital staff, they are street cleaners, they are business people, they're bus drivers. If you ask them, are you happy? Probably most of them will say no. That the economy is not doing well. I'm struggling. I'm unhappy. Doesn't mean that their unhappiness means that they see the state as illegitimate.
right.
And so and Iranians are in general very, uh, I mean, when I was in the UK, I sort of felt that the British were a bit like us, in that the Iranians, we complain a lot. For example, I would never, sitting with friends, let's say we're having lunch together, or we're just sitting together. If one of us said, I used the metro yesterday. Wow, the metro is so good, and you were like, why is he talking like that? Because we usually criticize. It doesn't matter. We'll just criticize. Like if I'm on campus, we'll criticize the management. If we'll criticize uh, the Ministry of Education will criticize the university. None of my colleagues will ever say, wow, things are good at the university. We have this new, you know, we have this budget. We're have these new high-tech capabilities at the University of Tehran. No one talks like that. It's almost always criticism. And if you go in a taxi in Iran, if you go in a bus, if you go in the metro, that's what you're going to hear.
Right.
And they'll attack the government, they'll attack the leader, they'll attack God, they'll attack whoever they want. So it's very different from the perceptions in the West. And so often when these Western mainstream journalists come to Iran and they get in a taxi, they think that this is the North Korea stereotype. I've never been to North Korea. I'm just saying, I don't want to make it. I'm just saying this. They think this is everyone here has to praise the great leader or whatever. And so when they hear people criticizing, they think, so the regime, as they love to call it, is falling apart. People hate it. You get in this taxi, they're attacking it. You get in that bus, they're attacking it. And people in Iran like talking. I mean, we're very, it's sort of like going to Latin America. If you sit beside an Iranian in the public space and you talk, they'll talk. It's not like they'll say, leave me alone. It's the opposite. They're very nice people. I mean, people should definitely visit Iran. Even now in Tehran, by the way, right now in Tehran, if a woman walks down the street at 11 or 12 p.m. at night alone, she's safe. I'm not saying 100% safe, but she is 99.99% safe. And but in any case, the point I'm trying to make is that after the war started, they thought Iran would collapse. And then they said, there's this rally around the flag effect. That is to a degree true. But like 15 million people in Tehran attending a funeral, or 16 million, I don't know exactly the number, that's not rallying around the flag. You saw people weeping, you saw people, and one of the things it was so difficult just getting there. I mean, it's not as if, I'll just go and see what's going on there. It took me 3 hours to get there in 35 or 36 degrees Celsius. And almost everyone was wearing black, which is terrible in such weather. And then you're in the crowd for hours and it's packed. I mean, you just have to pray that nothing bad happens where there'd be some, people crushed. They were in the government and the security were asking old people not to attend, people with infants not to attend, because they were afraid of the sheer size of the crowd. So I was walking for hours in the funeral, and then it took me a couple of hours to get home after the funeral, and I just went and slept because I was just so exhausted. I mean, it was not just like you go to the local, I don't know, stadium and sit down and drink some Coke and have some, I don't know, popcorn and then go back. It was you had to spend your whole day. And among these 16 million people in Tehran alone, I'm not talking about the funeral in the city of Qom, millions, in Mashhad, millions, in Iraq, millions. Many people are working class. I mean, they may have lost their jobs. Americans bombed their factories, or because of the siege on the ports, they've lost their jobs, or because of the inflation due to the war, life has become much more difficult. These people, it's different when I go from when someone who's struggling spends an entire day going to this funeral. So this is not rallying around the flag. This is, this shows a deep bond that exists between the Islamic Republic of Iran, however we want to define it, and the public. And again, so in the West, if they say, well, people like this, crazy regime. Well, perhaps it's not all that crazy as it's presented to people there. And I've said this, I think maybe on Jimmy Dore with when I spoke with Jimmy Dore last night. And I know some of your viewers who have heard me before may get irritated, but there are a couple of good books that I think people should read on Iran. One is called Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Mann Leverett. Both worked in the White House, both academics, both views on Iran evolved over the years. It's a very good book, not published by the Iranians, two Americans, one Catholic, Flint, Hillary, Jewish, both very principled and decent people. Flint resigned from his position in the White House over the Iraq War, which says a lot. Another good book is by Alistair Crook called Resistance, the Essence of the Islamist Revolution. These two books are good to read. And with regards to the nuclear program and Iran wanting to blow up the world, there are a couple of good books too. One is by Peter Oborn called The Dangerous Delusion. He's British, a conservative author. And the other is by Gareth Porter, who you may know of, or you may know. He wrote a book called Manufactured Crisis. These four books I think people should read. And I think if they read these books, I think they'll have a better understanding of why this does make sense, that people feel so attached to the state. But that doesn't mean, when I say they feel very much attached to the state, doesn't mean that people say it's life in Iran is wonderful and this is a fantastic place and there's no corruption and everything that the government does is just wonderful and we're all so happy. No, most people are dissatisfied. Most people are dissatisfied in polls, always. I mean, when you look at the polls that take place in Iran, the majority of Iranians are dissatisfied. But that's a different thing than the legitimacy of the state.
See, now, even you saying this, we're given the impression that you would disappear after you said that on an American show. In fact, we were told.
Well, my handlers are asleep right now.
Yeah. So they're going to miss this. We were told, I think, 10,000 protesters killed. Then it turned into 20,000. Then it turned into 50,000. Were protesters killed? And if so, under what circumstances and what kinds of numbers? And who were they?
Right. You're going back a few months ago, and this was before the war.
This was before.
When,
well, they used this as a pretext, and I think they used it to convince Trump that, just like with Iraq, we're going to be greeted as liberators, right? They convinced him that no, the people are going to rise up as soon as we come.
That's right. So what happened, and I just in case I don't remember the dates because the Persian calendar is different from your calendar, and but this was over 2 days, about a few months before the war began. We had what happened was that there was a sudden drop in the Iranian currency. And people came to the streets, not in huge numbers, but in like a couple of thousand, I guess, Tehran at least. And they were mostly business people. It was in the city center where the businesses are and the marketplaces. And no one was arrested. Later on, like for 2 days, they came to the streets. And no one was arrested. They protested. The government, meaning the current administration in power, the President Pezeshkian, apologized and said, you're right, your grievances are legitimate, we're trying to fix the situation, and so on. Later on, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, the current Treasury Secretary, he himself took credit for manipulating the Iranian currency and crashing the currency.
Well, that's his specialty. So
exactly.
He did to Britain. Yeah.
Exactly. And so he took credit for it, and he said, I brought people to the streets. Okay, so that's A. You have people on the streets. Then, after a couple of days, we saw a different type of crowd enter and join the protesters, but then overtake them, very violent. They started burning hospital, clinics, buses, taxis, fire engines, and so on, and beating police. Then in a 2-day period, you had extreme violence. On day one, they started killing a large number of police officers. And then, so here I have to go to footnote number 2, and that is that Channel 14 of Israel, which is close to Netanyahu, they put out a report saying that the Israelis effectively, intelligence, they said foreign, but it meant Israel or Israel in the United States. They were the ones who who smuggled in large amounts of weapons, which led to the killing of hundreds of police officers. The tweet is still there. I mean, the tweet for the program it's in English. Simultaneously, the Mossad, in their Persian language media, they said that we are on the ground with the protesters or the rioters, to be more precise. And then Pompeo too said that the Mossad is on the ground. Later on, he expanded further on this. Trump also later on said this. So then that first night there were heavy battles. The second night there were even heavier battles on the streets, and in all, 3,117 people were killed. And the government gave all their names and their ID numbers, who they were. Many of them were police officers. Many of them were volunteers. Many of them were ordinary people who were killed in the crossfire, and many, it is believed, were people who were targeted by these people who were carrying out the insurrection. They had weapons, and there's a lot of footage showing them killing people and burning buildings. Like in one clinic, they burned the clinic, and a nurse was inside. She burned to death. Or they burned a mosque, and there were like 2 young men inside. They burned to death, and there were lots of such instances. So the Iranians have put out those numbers of all the people, and I don't know the numbers anymore. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I think probably like the police officers and officers of the law combined, probably 300, 350 of them were killed, if not like 400 or so. And then among those people who were carrying out, who had guns and who were carrying out the insurrection, about 800 or 900 of them were killed. I'm just, what do you say? You say ballpark numbers.
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
guessing. I don't remember very well, and I can look this up. And then the rest were just people who were on the streets or walking, and they were being killed and attacked. But I have a friend who's a physician, and he said like a lot of the people who were brought to his hospital, like 10 or 15, and he's an expert in English, I think you'd call it trauma, or anyway, people who are badly wounded in some incident. And he said a lot of them were shot from very close up, and from behind, like 2 meters away, 5 meters away, 10 meters away, and with weapons that the police do not use. So in any case, the point is that the Mossad took credit for it. Trump tried to take credit for it. The numbers were inflated, but in reality, those who sent in the weapons, and then what the government did was that during these 2 days of riots, they cut off the internet. And when they cut off the internet, things died down immediately. Why? Because these groups, because they were saying like these are spontaneous protesters.
Right.
Spontaneous protesters, I'm not in communication with you. Let's say I'm protesting in this city and you're protesting in that city. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I'm protesting in my side street, burning tires or breaking a few windows, and you're doing the same thing somewhere else. But there's no coordination. But if there is coordination, and then you and I suddenly lose the means to coordinate, then the whole thing begins to fall apart. And these people were all in coordination. both with outside the country and with one another. And so as soon as they cut off the internet, suddenly the whole thing began to fall apart. And it fizzled out. And on day 3, nothing happened. Literally on day 3, I think it was a Thursday and a Friday. Again, I may be wrong, but this is how I remember it. It was a Thursday and a Friday. I think it was like January 8 or 9 in your calendar, but I may be wrong. Really sorry. But literally the day after, like Saturday, if it was like Thursday and Friday, the day after Saturday, you go out on the streets at 10 p.m., nothing's happening anymore.
And finally, Professor Marandi, how are things for people on the ground in Iran very early in the second round of strikes? We know there was oil raining from the sky there in Iran, something that could have very severe health impacts on civilians on the ground. Of course, there was the girls' school tragically hit, killing 168. How are the people in Iran right now after having what most people, I think, who are fair-minded would call war crimes committed against them? How is the day-to-day life there for people?
Well, I'll just add one final point, and that is that if this really is a regime, as they love to call it, that is killing protesters, peaceful protesters walking down the street, why would so many millions of people go to this funeral?
Well, of course.
And you know, Iran is one of the most highly educated societies in the world. The standard of education in Iran is very high, and literacy is universal. And there are many universities. The percentage of people who graduate from universities in Iran are very high. So Iranians are not a stupid people, or an ignorant people, or an illiterate people. That the numbers clearly show otherwise. Although there are no such thing as a stupid people, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
And also, the Iranians, there are hundreds of Persian media outlets outside the country funded by the West in Persian that are day and night attacking Iran with disinformation. There's nothing like it in the world. The Chinese don't have it. The Russians don't have it. And so the Iranians are constantly hearing all sorts of negative things about the country. So it's not as if they're only hearing about the greatness of the leader and the greatness of the government and how everything here is perfect and all that. That's actually the opposite is true. They outgun the media that is in Iran because they're much better funded. The oil issue that you mentioned, this happened during the 40-day war, that 4 months ago, and the sky was indeed black. They bombed the refinery in Tehran, but also an oil depot to the west of the city. I live in the east of the city, and it was sort of like like the Lord of the Rings, where the sky goes black in the movie. It was like that, like darkness.
Right.
We were very, very fortunate that we had rain at a time when it usually doesn't rain in Iran the day after. And so, but it created a huge mess because like everywhere was a mess. Your car, if you touch the doors, the doorknobs, everywhere, it's like oily. But still, that didn't clean the whole thing, and the wind took it. And there was wind, fortunately, but still, it was horrific. They destroyed the refinery.
Infrastructure, the refinery.
Yeah, but they focus on the oil itself to create this environmental disaster. The school in Minab, 168 were slaughtered there. Trump just a few hours ago, I think, said that this may have been AI or something.
Right.
And It reminds me, by the way, about the insurrection. I think January the 8th and 9th. I may be wrong, but which I was
Yeah,
discussing.
yeah, January 8th.
Afterwards,
That's
people
6th.
came to. Okay, yeah, whatever the date was. People came to the streets in protest against the insurrection, against the rioters, and they were huge in number. And then in the West, they were calling it AI. So everything, if you bomb Iran, it's AI. If the people in Iran are protesting against Western interference in Iran's internal affairs, it's all AI. This time, the crowd was so huge. And of course, there were quite a few alternative media people, including Max Blumenthal here, as you pointed out, but quite a few others, that they just had to accept that, look, this was huge. But in any case, the atrocities have been ongoing. Just as I said at the beginning of the program, a couple of hours before the show, a children's cancer hospital was hit in the city of Ahvaz. It's the capital of the province of Khuzestan, which borders Iraq and the Persian Gulf. This is what we're dealing with. I mean, very close to where I am, people would gather at nights and rally in favor of the armed forces and the government and so on. They fired a missile at that rally. Literally a 15-minute walk from where I'm sitting right now. And they killed a woman. And then there was another rally that I attended on a Friday. It's called the Quds Day rally. It's like every last Friday of the month of Ramadan since the beginning of the revolution. People would gather to support the Palestinian people. They fired a missile at us. And a woman was killed there too. And there's footage of it. I mean, people, on the streets, and then a missile strikes, right? And the woman is killed. I mean, bombing gatherings, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing apartment blocks. They want to take out a person. They kill everyone in the building. I mean, after Gaza and after Lebanon, I think everyone
it's
knows.
very much like Israel. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, what the Americans are doing is very much like what Israel is. And they don't even take responsibility. Trump tried to say that the Iranians killed the kids in the school.
Professor Marandi, thank you very much for joining us. I know it is very, very late for you. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm here right now.
So if people want to come to Tehran.
Yeah, I can give you my address, and you can give them directions.
Don't do that.
But I've been removed from Twitter. I've been removed, from Instagram and Facebook a long, long time ago. I have my Twitter account, but that's all I have.
All right. So follow Professor Marandi on Twitter. Watch his many appearances. I don't know when you sleep, but we appreciate you coming here.
Thank you very much for having me, Russell. It's always a great pleasure being on your show, both here and on your own show.
Thank you. It's a great honor having you.
You're very good.
All right. Let's go to an ad, and then we will be meeting up with our friend Katie Halper.
If you're struggling with cravings, bloating, or stubborn weight gain, your gut health could be playing a bigger role than you think. A damaged microbiome can affect everything from inflammation and digestion to cravings and weight gain. And with today's processed foods and environmental toxins, a lot of people's digestive health is taking a hit, which is why taking care of your gut health may be more important now than ever before. That's where a fermented food called kimchi can make a real difference. Kimchi is naturally rich in over 900 probiotic strains that help support gut bacteria. Because when your gut bacteria are properly supported, your body is better able to process food efficiently, regulate cravings, support digestion, and maintain a healthier metabolism overall. Studies even show that eating kimchi can reduce your body fat by 31.8%. But supporting your gut microbiome takes consistency, and most people aren't eating kimchi every day because of the taste, smell, or the hassle that comes with it. That's why I don't eat it. But I do take Guess what? Kimchi won. That's why Brightcore created Kimchi One, delivering the benefits of fermented kimchi in a convenient capsule form to help restore your gut's natural balance every day. Because when your body is functioning properly from the inside out, everything else becomes easier. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking the link below for 25% off your entire order. Or for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order or free shipping. Call them now at 888-253-0418.
Whoop. All right. This is Russell Dobler filling in for Jimmy Dore. I got to pull up Katie's bio, actually. I was busy looking at my exhibits. All right. Just give me 1 second, folks. All right. Here we go. All right. Let's set it up again. This is Russell Dobler filling in for Jimmy Dore. We have Katie Halper joining us next. She's an American writer, filmmaker, comedian, political commentator who hosts the Katie Halper Show and co-hosts the Useful Idiots podcast. She directed the documentary Commie Camp, while her writings have appeared in major outlets, including the New York Times, The Nation, and The Guardian. She's also a co-founder of the political comedy ensemble Laughing Liberally and a national director of Living Liberally, using satire and journalism to critique establishment politics. Please welcome our friend Katie Halper. What's up, Katie? I think you're muted.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to get canceled. That is a little bit, no criticism of you, but I have to somehow make sure that that bio doesn't pop up anywhere. It's very out of date.
That's what they handed to me.
I know. I no longer identify as a liberal. Thank God. That was a different time. That's when Bush was in office, and there was a lot of liberal lefty crossover. But yeah, and I haven't done comedy in a while either, so I don't usually mention that. And my latest documentary that I'm working on now is about Holocaust survivors protesting the Gaza genocide. But besides that, perfect.
Malcolm!
Yeah. No, it's not. It's my fault. I should have sent you something. And
yes.
Yeah.
Are you back in New York? It looks like
I'm upstate.
Oh, you're still upstate.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
But thank you for having me. I don't mean to sound like a spoiled brat. I just can see my enemies further to the left than me. Mocking me now as a lib. I'm a reform lib. I was an undercover liberal because I came from a leftist family that I kind of collaborated.
You were like a red diaper baby, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I was willing to work with the libs.
Well, this is part of what I wanted to talk to you about. They're going to call you a lib no matter what. So in the wake of the Sanders campaign, a lot of people kind of Dem exited, and the Dem exit thing kind of evolved into a post-duopoly thing. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I only support independents. In this election cycle, I think for the first time, you've had enough of a momentum shift and enough of a generational shift that you're starting to see candidates who, at least by appearances, represent a lot of what the people who were committed to the Bernie Sanders project believed in. There had never been any candidates like Avia Chevalier up in my district, or like Valdez getting through Democratic primaries. It had never happened.
Right.
And you never had anybody like Graham Plattner who could plausibly become a senator. I think that has been extremely confusing for a lot of people, because I think rightly so, a lot of people walked away from the Bernie Sanders campaign, myself included, saying, well, you really can't work with Democrats. Even if you like the candidate, they run a rigged game. And I think those concerns are still valid. With Plattner, you kind of saw all these threads come together in one place, right? You had a lot of people absolutely insisting, because he had a military history, that you can't support him. He went on to be a merc. How can you support this guy? At the same time, he's given you yes for an answer, right? Gaza is a genocide. We've got to stop weapons to Israel and so on. All this came together until finally when you had the breaking story, the now infamous glute massage. It just became the proverbial circular firing squad with very unlikely alignments. The people who would consider themselves, I think, the most radical, kind of aligned more with the majority report. More the PMC commentators of like, yeah, Plattner, he's terrible, get him out. And you had more people like Janine Eunice, Glenn Greenwald were more like, you're setting a very dangerous precedent because the Democrats are always going to use this once they see that it works. And we're going to get into the Michigan race where, sure enough, that's where they're going. Now, when I saw this happen, it's funny because you mentioned not wanting to be branded a lib.
Yeah.
It seems like no matter what flavor of left people are, there is a very strong cancel culture contingent, whether it's the radical left, whether it's the lib left, they like to cancel. They like that whole thing. So Glenn, actually, when he was commenting on what his thoughts were about Plattner, this was just part of what he said.
It's hard to explain this, but unless you've ever been associated with the left. But the thing about the left is what they crave more than anything else is not advancing their ideology, not changing society. Obviously, I'm talking generally here, there are exceptions, but in general, what they crave most is the ability to denounce and accuse because that makes them feel good.
Yeah, I thought we saw a lot of that coming from very unlikely directions, and a lot of people who had been allies came to cross purposes. What were your thoughts about the Plattner thing? Did you feel that he needed to be out of the race? Did you feel, as Glenn seemed to, and a lot of people did, it set a dangerous precedent that if you make that kind of accusation, no trial, nothing, they're out, because we know the DNC will always use that once they know it works. Indeed, they've already moved on to using it again in the Michigan race. What are your thoughts about that? And what are your thoughts about working with Democrats in general? Because I think even before this fell apart, there was a lot of consternation. Like, well, hang on. Well, do you support a Democrat now if they're saying yes? It literally never really came up before.
Yeah, so I do think that what the things that you're bringing up is the kind of bittersweet news that is now Israel in some circles is toxic and AIPAC is toxic, which is great, but it also is going to mean that people are faking it and paying lip service. So in a way, it's a real sign of progress that Israel has become something that people want to run on, but we have to be also very vigilant. Now, I'm not talking about Plattner because I don't actually think he was at all disingenuous when it came to Israel. When it comes to the cancellation thing, I do find it interesting because you had libs who were canceling him beforehand, who hated him, right? And then you had leftists who I agree with on lots of things who were, a lot of people when he was finally kind of kicked out were saying stuff like, some people, who we agree with more politically, obviously, than the libs, we're saying stuff like, oh, it wasn't enough for him to have been in Blackwater. Like, this is what it takes. It takes an accusation from a white woman. Now, I actually don't, to me, it's not about, this sounds so corny, but it's not really about what you've done as much as where you come from there. Which is why, I've said this before, and I had Greg Stoker on my show last week. And, I do there is incredible power and organizing power and narrative power in having former veterans who are anti-war. They are probably the left's most best secret weapon or overt weapon, I guess. So I don't think, and in fact, I remember, I don't work for Greg's campaign. It's going to sound like I'm but because he's running for Congress. But I remember having him on, and in the comments, people were criticizing him. And he said, because he did 4 tours. I'm sorry, I'm not getting that, may not get all the details, but multiple tours in the Middle East. And he was like, okay, well, good luck. Good luck turning your back on everyone who's ever served as someone running for office. So I do think it wasn't so much Plattner's past as much as how far he had come. I would have liked to have seen a stronger condemnation from him. Not in an ultra radical discourse way that would have been alienating, but I think more of a Like a lot of the stuff he said, I was listening to it afterwards. He talked about how like they were useless wars, and that's not enough. Like it's not just that it's useless. That's almost reminds me of like Vietnam was a blunder. You know, that was a big mistake. Like there should be a moral indictment. And he did do that in some cases. But the truth is, I actually kind of stayed away from the Plattner thing because I didn't have. There are a lot of politicians and candidates who really excite me, like Abdul El-Sayed. I really like him. And I was just like, that Nazi tattoo. Here's what I knew. All I knew is that I hated the people who hated Plattner. That was like my biggest, that was kind of the clearest thing for me. Now, not the people on the left who hated him because of his Blackwater past. I don't hate those people. Like I may have a strategic or political disagreement with them. But I just realized I can really brag about this because I was willing to forgive the Nazi tattoo and the potentially the Nazi tattoo and the Blackwater stuff. So totally equal egalitarian treatment. As a Jew, I was fine. You know, I wasn't gonna object to the Nazi tattoo and not the Blackwater, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I do think that, you know, I think there's a difference between left and libs, and leftists and libs cancel over different things.
Sure.
So I'd love to like talk about this.
But they behave the same way, more or less.
Yeah, there is a self-righteousness, but a lot of our friends do that too. And I find it a little bit, I actually, you know where I really, this is going to get me canceled, but I sometimes find the people who are the most critical of electoral politics and present themselves as the most radical and like, clear-eyed, and they see through everything. I find that those people sometimes are the ones who fetishize electoral politics. Because honestly, if you get what electoral politics are, you get that it's one part of something and someone's going to be in power or not, right? And I'm not suggesting people like rally around Joe Biden, but someone is going to be in power or not. And I don't think it's a bad thing to want Zoran Mamdani in power. And yeah, push him and say that there are certain systemic things that no one will ever escape within electoral politics. But to me, that's actually more realist than and less naive than the people who I think can obsess over party politics and like third parties. Because again, I'm not opposed to them. I've had lots of Greens on my show, but I also think that you kind of have to judge case by case basis. Yes, the duopoly is limiting, but are there cases where someone's going to be able to get into office and make concrete differences? Yeah. And there's no the thing about this argument is like, there's no real audience for this because you're so uncool on the left if you say this stuff. And of course, the libs don't like it either because we're inherently kind of critiquing electoralism as inherently flawed, not just like flawed at this moment because there's money in politics.
Yeah, that's what's always funny when you get the accusation that this take is a sellout take.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Sellout take. I mean, the real money in this business is to go full Gunther Eagleman. Like if you just have no morals, like that's where you want to go. That's where the money is.
Right.
Like or go on the other side, go full like pod save.
Yes.
Just that's it. But this lane, yeah, you got to be like allergic to money.
Yeah.
To go this way. You mentioned Mamdani. And this is an argument I've been making for people who are radical and want more radical reforms, as do I. You know, most people are not aware even of the conversation you guys are having, right? When they think of socialism and leftism, they look at Mamdani.
Right.
Good luck convincing them to listen to what you have to say about your more radical political project if their perception is that this guy is a failure.
Right.
You should hope this guy succeeds.
Exactly. That's a good point.
And promotes the brand of socialism. So then you can say, well, you like what he did.
Exactly.
This is what I'm about. But I think it became for a lot of people a political identity to be in opposition.
Yeah.
Specifically to Democrats, because you could say something positive about Thomas Massey. And you will, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Say something.
Tucker Carlson.
Right. Tucker Carlson.
Not a politician, but same principle. Yeah.
Sure.
Right. No one will call you a sellout, even though, pretty preppy guy. I mean, he says some great stuff about Israel, but yeah.
Sure. Well, and with Tucker Carlson, you have, a lot more that you would disagree with politically, right? Than a Mamdani. But
100%. Yeah.
but you say something positive about Mamdani, it's a meltdown. You
Yeah.
know, going to China, going to Vietnam, it definitely gave me some perspective on what it takes to build a revolution.
Mm.
And we're so not there. So at that point, nobody wants to say the word accelerationist, but that's what it's about. Like, that's why you don't want anyone who's going to make things a little better, because, hey, well, that's going to make the system more palatable.
Yes.
But you're not in a position to take advantage of a social collapse. So what are you trying to do? You know
Yeah.
who's in a position to take advantage of it? Peter Thiel.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point, which is that, I mean, again, some of my best friends have the positions that I'm criticizing right now, really. And I think what's interesting is that I often am like, okay, just say you're an accelerationist, just like own it. That's like, then we can talk about what we're really talking about. But it's often it's like, it's like grievance politics, which I get because I have them also. But the question is, what are we going to do? And so, you know, sometimes I remember talking to someone who I really respect, and, you know, I was saying, like, okay, obviously, can we just admit that Trump is a lot worse than the Dems domestically?
Right.
And I would say not better foreign policy wise either, but that's another story. This was early on, and he was like, well, no, because look what Joe Biden did with the railway workers. And yes, that's true. The point is, like, of course, there are too many similarities. And of course,
Sure.
it's pathetic that Biden, the big labor guy, like, you know, kneecapped striking railway workers. But that does not make them equivalent. And that is because, and I bring this up because this is a really smart person, and I know he's an accelerationist, but he won't say that out loud.
They never will.
Yeah. Closeted accelerationist. Yeah.
It's like, hey, I understand why you'd feel that way. Make the case.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Make the case. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not enough to just tell me about how bad the Dems are, because I know that, you know, it's not like I'm someone who thinks that we really have a good and evil.
Right. Yeah. Well, I voted for Jill Stein, and we openly, said in advance we were going to vote for Jill Stein. And my main rationale for that, or for withholding a vote, is to get leverage. I felt if they know you'll vote for them when they're endorsing genocide, what leverage do you have?
Right.
Like, why even vote? And that's where it raises the question. Okay, so if your leverage bears fruit, like now you showed you won't vote for that, and you start to get politicians who are legitimately anti-genocide, now are you just in the habit of attacking Democrats? So,
right.
what did you want leverage for? And why would anybody come around to your point of view if you're only going to attack them? Like, why not just at that point align with the Zionists? They'll give you whatever you want if you align with them. Why go the other way if you're not going to support them?
Yeah. Which isn't to say you don't critique, but I agree. Yeah, I agree. You can't.
Of course.
And I know that. I don't tell you that. Yeah.
What do you think about Sharma's campaign out there?
I honestly haven't been following it that much this time around. I've had her on in the past, but I haven't been. What about you?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Oh, I've had her on in the past, but I haven't this round. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that is a good and a rare example of an independent campaign that's not quixotic, where because it's a jungle primary, it's unique circumstances, she could actually win. So yeah, I think that's an important campaign. I find, just like as you get older, you sound like your parents. I find the longer you're in the activist space, the more you sound like that 70-year-old activist you met when you started. Like, eventually they evolve into, yes, they're not really members of political parties. They support causes, and they take candidates on a case-by-case basis. That's where you end up, because it's the only thing you can really do. And I don't argue against trying to build a more radical political project. The perspective I got out of going to Vietnam, going to China, is that's a generational project.
Right.
Like, you got to be down for that. You gotta be willing to commit to something you're probably not going to live to see. And
Right.
if you can't do that, I don't even know what you're talking about, because that's what it's going to take. And I must say, as Americans, we're probably uniquely unqualified to build that kind of a movement, because we want things now. We want instant gratification. Tell an American, well, yeah, well, this is probably going to take 50 years, 100 years. What do you mean, right? So we have seen, I think, the fruit of their work on Plattner bearing out in Michigan now. So Abdul El Said, this is what he had to say on Gaza. As soon as you hear what he had to say, you'll know why they're pulling out all the stops to take him down.
Like, you can identify the systematic murder of tens of thousands of kids as a genocide, and then you want to say that you're a fighter for human rights and dignity. That's just hypocrisy. So I just think if you can't call the most heinous violation of human rights what it is, it's hard for me to believe that you're going to go and fight the Trump administration or fight the pharma CEOs or fight the health insurance CEOs who are making my life unlivable.
Well, so here's his opponent. Here's his opponent in a now infamous, kind of scary midsummer moment.
Yeah.
Talking about how Israel comes to her in her dreams.
And in the United States Congress, I will continue to fight for the people of Israel. I will continue
There you go.
for Israel.
More money, more money.
Israel comes to me in dreams. I see Israel's future, and I know that Israel will continue to exist for the Jewish people.
All right. So
How much of a nut? We talked about this a little bit on my show, but like, do you realize how much of a nut you have to be to say stuff like that if you're neither Jewish nor Christian Zionist? Like, that's not like, is she just going to stake out the territory of being a Christian Zionist? I mean, that is like some like evangelical born again discourse, or interestingly enough, and I know you understand this, like it is also the discourse of a religious or totally secular Jew.
Well, it's the discourse of somebody who got over $5 million from AIPAC.
Yeah, right. But the
That's
stuff, I mean, it comes to me in my dreams, but it's nightmares. Israel comes to me. Yeah.
Yeah, they're nightmares. And she just comes off as a crazy person. Like, this looks like a documentary of a cult.
Yeah, right.
Where you see somebody making that kind of an announcement. And then she's also, I mean, as if, that's kind of terrifying. Then this is going around now. This is just kind of clownish.
Be working on our behalf. I am going to be telling the stories on our behalf. Better believe I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's the Michigan way.
A little bit of stick it to them.
I mean, I almost love her. I love her as a bit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's like some classic SNL sketch character. Well, a lot of people are comparing it to the Chris Farley Van Down by the River character.
Oh, yeah.
So Ryan Graham, according to Neera Tanden, this is the safe, obvious pick for the general. Yeah, but as we all learned long ago, they would always rather lose to a Republican than win with anyone to the left of Francisco Franco.
Right.
And on top of that, that's not even a real accent. She's doing a Cory Bush here.
Yeah.
Sharing in the profession with those who have not come before you. Similar times of trying medical needs, wars and flus pass. You will see darkness. You will be pushed, and our society.
Yeah, you see, she doesn't have to talk like she just climbed off the back of an ice truck in 1934.
Right.
If she doesn't want to. Somebody told her that was going to work for her.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
don't sound like the guy who has a scary name. Basically.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So now, look, Graham Plattner, he obviously had a complicated past. That was something he was open about. Not so with her opponent. That's not going to stop them, though. No. So Abdul El Said, has been getting ads like this run against him.
Of Democratic women's groups call Abdul El Sayed's attacks on Haley Stevens sexist and the same tired playbook used against women. That's what El Sayed does. El Sayed called Michelle Obama's uninspired and ineffectual. He claimed Gretchen Whitmer was bought and sold.
Really?
And an employee said they were offered payment to keep silent after witnessing El Sayed disparaging women. Let's reject Abdul El Sayed's sexist attacks. UDP is responsible for the content of.
And there's
That is
nothing
so
gendered in any of that.
No, right. That's the irony. It's like sometimes people will say stuff and you're kind of like, you cringe a little bit. You don't disagree with them even on their attack, but you're like, don't use that word. Even sometimes it's something that it's like you want to play devil's advocate to kind of immunize them. And you're like, please don't use any possible word. Ineffective. Like, what is that? Is that something that I don't know about that's gendered? And here it's like, so this is an AIPAC funded cutout, right? That released this ad.
Emily's List, yes.
Oh, this was an Emily's List? Okay.
Well, they're quoted in there.
Well, they quote Shannon Watts and Emily's List. Emily's List has like never found a conservative centrist corporate Democrat that they don't love, and they will always go with that person over the actual progressive and over the actual feminist. And Emily's List, I just want to say a little thing. I mean, this is a lot of this is the Hillary Bernie dichotomy that we saw.
Sure.
And, regardless, this has nothing to do with whether or not you think Bernie was a sellout. I mean, going back to kind of our conversation, here's the deal. Hillary Clinton is a woman. That's true. She likes to talk about being a woman. Bernie Sanders is not a woman, and his record was much better when it comes to women's issues. Not only the direct, obvious ones like abortion, but stuff like, and if you are an intersectional feminist, which all these women claim to be, you would understand this, that when Bernie Sanders supports raising the minimum wage and Hillary Clinton doesn't, that is Bernie Sanders doing a policy better for women and women of color in particular. When you are someone like Abdul El Sayed and you oppose a genocide, guess who that's good for? I know that for people like Emily's List, Palestinian women don't count. But if I'm being charitable, if they cared to examine their fervid nationalism, maybe they would care about the fact that women and girls are being tortured, blown to bits, like deprived of like menstrual pads in jails, right? They're being sexually humiliated. Maybe these people have seen the IDF wearing the lingerie of Palestinian women. I mean, this is such personal identity politics, and it has nothing to do with women's rights. It has everything to do with how much someone resonates with the story, right? This is the same thing with Hillary Clinton. Like, they saw themselves in Hillary Clinton because they worked hard. And look, I'm sure we all like a lot of people deal with sexism in a casual way. Not the way that the women of Gaza deal with it, but I just think that we should be very wary of this. And here's a hint about the fact that here's a good way of realizing that that Abdul El Sayed is not sexist. One is they have nothing except for establishment Democrats saying that he's bad. Like, they don't have anything from anyone who worked with him. They literally cut to a DNC op who's going to tell you why he's bad. Oh, wow. I'm really convinced. I thought he was a good guy, but now that I know that Emily's List and Shannon Watts don't like him, now I'm convinced because they're very honest, brokers and judges of character. Oh yeah. Here it is. Don't even get me started. Yeah. And also note that they don't bring up a single piece of policy because there is nothing that he is worth. There's nothing she's better on. In fact, if you go to their websites, he is much more vocal about Roe v. Wade than she is. And Medicare for all is something he cares about. And that is something that disproportionately helps women too.
No, this is just disgusting. Mm-hmm. And, going back to, we kind of have a theme going here. Like, what do you do with a problem like the Democratic Party? Now, I started off kind of with the positive, talking about a Mamdani, that kind of thing. Hey, use it to promote something more radical. This is great that you got a guy identifying as a socialist who's popular and competent. And then you have this other side, like, how do you work with people like this? How do you work with people like that? This watching this gives me flashbacks to dealing with the Democrats, because now I think a lot of us are just checked out on the Democrats. We don't usually pay that kind of close attention to their shenanigans. But here are their shenanigans. Here's a reminder.
Endorsed Haley Stevens in Michigan. And I'm getting so much grief over that. Again, I think it's a great example of a show horse versus a workhorse. It's not easy to stand up as a woman for other women, especially online. Like the blowback is swift and furious. And that's obviously sexism. Like, how do we do this online? Push back on these narratives that aren't true about who we are and what we should advocate for, and in real life. Like, how do we make this shift when women only hold 25% of the 500,000 elected positions in this country?
Like every time we can demonstrate that a woman can win in a place that someone told us that we couldn't, we are carrying that forward. But I also think, it's why, even though anytime you say even just a simple positive thing in some of these races, you could end up being eviscerated online for it, that we keep showing up and doing it, right? And we need to keep showing up and doing it, because that is so critically important to our ability to push past this. Otherwise, we're just handing it over to them, right? We're kind of like, here's the cesspool of the manosphere and you can take it. We have to be willing to stand up and say, no, these attacks on Haley Stevens are sexist, and we're not going to let that stand, even when it is really painful. And then, you carrying that over to these lessons that we're seeing in Maine, all of those months of people eviscerating us for kind of speaking the truth about who this man was. And today we're living those very real consequences of that.
Yeah. Can we have a moment of silence for these women for being eviscerated online? They're so, this is the thing I'm saying. Everything for them is direct biography and personal experience. And they feel like they've been attacked. Okay, first of all, it's like they make it sound like they're speaking for the voiceless, and they have the guts to come out and defend a sitting member of Congress who is running for Senate, like who gets money from AIPAC. This woman is not a disenfranchised person. She's a member of the elite, and they happen to want her to become senator because they like having more women in powerful positions, so they can also advocate for the status quo. That's basically what they want. And by the way, both of those women, Jessica and
let me throw this up. I didn't set it up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's between Zionist Shannon Watts and AIPAC funded Emily's List Jessica Mackler.
Yes, and they're both cited. And they're both cited in that video that we just watched before. They quote Shannon Watts and Jessica Mackler.
Oh, right.
So Shannon is the one who says sexist, and then the tired talking points or whatever, the tired game. But like, honestly, first of all, they must have been so pissed with Daria Lisa and Claire Valdez and all the other people who are winning their primaries. They must be like, every time a woman of color wins who's in DSA, they must like be having I don't know, they call each other probably and get like a mani-pedi and have like a margarita to drown their tears. But it's just so funny that these people, and also Shannon Watts is a Buddhist, which is hilarious. Apparently she meditates.
You're freaking
I'm not
kidding me.
Not kidding. I don't think she, and there are Jews who are Buddhist, but I don't think she's Jewish. But she, and again, this makes it even weirder. And it's not like you don't get like I don't excuse Jewish supremacists, but it's a little bit like more expected when you're just like a liberal Jew or a pet progressive except on Palestine. Like, I'm not surprised that some dumb like Deborah Messing, though she's really dumb, but I'm not going to be surprised that she like signs a letter thanking Joe Biden for defending Israel after October 7th. But Shannon Watts also signed a letter saying that. She also talked about the sexual, the rape that happened on October 7th, the rape that actually didn't happen on October 7th, right? And here's the litmus test. Look, is it easy to fall for this mass rape hoax about October 7th? Yes, because you only had to look at the New York Times, right? You didn't have to turn to like Al Minor or whatever. But here's the thing. Now we know that there have been sexual assaults. Like, first of all, I highly recommend people read the Palestinian Feminist Collective's report on sexual violence that they just released. I'm going to have someone on to talk about that on my show next week. But like, forget that. Just knowing, following at all, like, that there was at least one sexual assault, a gang rape captured on video, right? And we know that the Israeli society protested not the rape, but protested the attempt to hold the rapist accountable. We know that a member of the Knesset said it's justifiable to insert sticks into people's rectums. So where are all these feminists who care about sexual violence? Why aren't they up in arms? The Dana Bashes, the Jake Tapper. I mean, again, I guess I'm naive because I really thought they would just to cover their asses. Like, I didn't expect them to retract. I didn't expect them to say all these witnesses have been debunked. I didn't expect them to say the family members of the woman who was the star of the New York Times article said that it was misrepresented. No, they're not going to apologize or anything like that. But I just thought that maybe they would pretend that they care about rape even when the victims are Palestinian.
They can't. They can't,
right.
because one, the way that they get paid, they can't go there. They
Right.
can't go there. It would destroy their whole grift. And also just ideologically, the world that they live in, they can't. They can't. This is
They'd be
why
shunned.
they'd be shunned, and they'd also. This is why it's so hard to change people's minds about things like this. Because if you think this way, yeah, you're right. Their whole professional and social network is built
Right.
around that. It's like
Right.
leaving a cult.
Right. It is true. It is leaving call. And now, by the way, you know what Shannon Watts's careers were before this?
What's up?
She was a hold on, where is this? She worked as vice president of communications at health insurance giant WellPoint, and also was held a number of public relations jobs at GE Healthcare, Monsanto, and Fleischmann Hillard.
What a shock.
I know. You
Well-
can
well-
never see that coming. You never see that coming, right? And by the way, listen, just one other thing. I'm sorry. I
No,
hate
go.
when people weaponize
Please.
sexism. I can't stand it. It's like their definition of sexism is Abdul El Sayed running against a woman and not invoking any sexist tropes. Okay. By that argument, Haley Stevens is a racist Islamophobe.
Right. Sure. Sure.
Every time she criticizes him, I'm gonna, call her that. And by the way, did you see that Dana Bash? Speaking of like rape deniers, did you see Dana Bash? It was literally, I don't know if you cover this, but the night of the Michigan debate, Netanyahu came on CNN. Dana Bash said to him, the only way that Zionists like Schumer, politicians, or Rahm Emanuel or Zionists in the media like Dana Bash can ever criticize Israel is if they argue it's bad for Jews, and
Right.
especially the Israeli Jews, right? So
Right.
Dana Bash has Netanyahu on, and she says to him, what do you say to these Jewish lawmakers who say that you are making Jews less safe? I'm talking about Haley Stevens. And Netanyahu was like, well, then she probably thinks that, she does. He basically thought that she was like maybe critical of Zionism. And Dana Bash is like, no. She's a good one.
Yeah.
Like, she's not, right? Why does she bring up Haley Stevens? She's not Jewish, right? She mentions Jewish
Mhm.
lawmakers. It was so transparent. Then you get Netanyahu criticizing Haley Stevens, right? And some apparatchik from Biden, Rapid Response, a press guy for Biden, clips that. Okay, him criticizing her. They leave out the end where he's like, "Thank you, Haley, for all you do," after he learns that she is a big Israel supporter. Neera Tanden retweets this. His name is Andrew Bates, the guy who clips it. And then Haley brings it up twice during the debate because it is such an incestuous, gross circle jerk of corporate Zionist shills. And it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but there's no way that. What are the odds she brings up Haley Stevens when talking about Jewish lawmakers, which she's not, in an interview with Netanyahu the day of the debate? And another thing that Dana Bash did is, I don't know if you guys remember this. This is an insane story, but basically Dana Nessel, who was the Attorney General of Michigan, and someone who
Right.
like Shannon Watts and everyone should be condemning because she's just bad, like lib bad, because she refused to prosecute the Republican governor of Michigan for his role
on
in Flint.
Flint.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
But she
Jordan
went-
got into that a lot
Yeah,
in his
yes.
book. Yeah.
Right. But she went really hard on people protesting about Gaza, right? And Rashida Tlaib said that there was a double standard in terms of the treatment of protesters, because if you were protesting about Gaza, you were a lot more punished than you were if you were protesting about BLM or climate, right? So Dana Nessel tweets out that Rashida Tlaib had said she couldn't do her job because of her religion. Do you remember? This is such an insane story. Do you remember Rashida Tlaib was the subject of that really racist, vile cartoon that had like a pager on her desk? And she's like, oh, did someone just ring my pager?
I didn't say that. No.
So Dana Nessel, in the bitchiest, most passive aggressive way ever, this is how she defends Rashida Tlaib. She cites that racist cartoon that was broadly condemned, and says this is Islamophobic and wrong, just like it's wrong to imply that I can't do my job because of my religion. Okay. Again, Rashida Tlaib.
Now I remember what you're
okay.
talking about. Actually, I think I covered this.
And then what happens next? Jake Tapper asks Gretchen Whitmer on the Sunday morning news show on his State of the Union what he has to say about the fact that Rashida Tlaib said she couldn't do her job because of her religion. Whitmer has no idea what he's talking about because she's not used to probably like people at CNN just literally regurgitating the tweets of Attorney General.
Right.
So she kind of does this diplomatic response. Next day, Jewish Insider writes an article about how Gretchen Whitmer refuses to condemn anti-Semitism. Jake Tapper Dana Bash does a segment on it, and the segment is about how both the Democrats and the Republicans refuse to condemn anti-Semitism. And her example of the Democrats refusing to condemn anti-Semitism is Gretchen Whitmer not condemning Rashida Tlaib. And so again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There just was obviously a conspiracy.
Sure.
You know, and you sound crazy if you say that, but
well, watching this now, they were kind of back on their heels for a second, and you can really see that getting Plattner's scalp emboldened them to go back to the identity politics playbook. This can still work. It can still work. And that's all they have. And that's why so many of us walked away from the Democratic Party. I can't imagine ever going out and saying, yeah, work with this Democrat again, because even if I believed in the candidate, I don't believe in the party. Look what just happened with Plattner.
Yeah.
Whether it's true, not true, whatever. I'm not litigating that. Clearly, it was an orchestrated hit job on him. You want to say he had a past that made him particularly vulnerable to those kinds of attacks? Sure. Al Sayed doesn't, and they're still doing it to him.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like that was irrelevant. That was just made it easier for them.
Right. And none of these people, by the way, I mean, I interviewed Tara Reid, and none of these people said anything about Tara Reid when she came forward. Nothing. I mean, so the rank hypocrisy, and then a lot of them later condemned her and said, you know, after like the entire liberal media threw everything in the kitchen sink at this woman to expose like that she didn't pay rent sometimes or whatever. You know what I mean? It was like such poverty shaming. But there was no more corroboration for this woman than for Tara Reid, and none of these people said anything.
Way less
over the years.
Way less. Yeah. No, it was the same thing when Hillary was running. If you brought up Bill
Clinton, Juanita Broaddrick?
No, I'm having a brain fart.
Monica Lewinsky. Yeah.
If you brought up Monica Lewinsky, I literally had women who would excoriate any Republican man who had done that, who indeed had been excoriating Bill Clinton for that. All of a sudden flipped to, she was old enough to know what she was doing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it was no,
yes, it's
that's
true. Right.
Nothing.
Because they were obsessed with, again, because their feminism or their solidarity with women is like trumped by their own personal identification. So they care more about what happens to Hillary Clinton because they see themselves in her.
Right.
Or then there's other stuff where people just had weird issues with men. Like, I mean, my friend went out on a date with someone who was like, I don't like Bernie because he reminds me of my grandfather. It's like, okay, well, maybe I hope your grandfather was yelling about like Medicare for all. That sounds like a good guy. But if it's like, it was so aesthetic. And then remember he makes my skin crawl, that Mimi Roca woman.
Yes, which if they liked Bernie, she would have lost her job for being an anti-Semite.
100%.
If Bernie had been an establishment candidate and somebody said that.
What about
these are anti-Semitic Nazi tropes?
What about when Joyanne Reid, who's I would love to ask her if she has any regrets about this, given how, I mean, we're talking about Hillary Clinton, who just like literally wrote an op-ed endorsing Trump's Gaza plan. I think Bernie Sanders a lot of people watching, I know, think he did not go far enough and does not go far enough in Gaza, but there's no comparison between where he is on this and Hillary Clinton. In fact, no comparison between where he is on this and any single senator. But I will say,
well, Hillary Clinton just endorsed the Gaza
the peace plan. Did I? Yeah, exactly. She just wrote an op-ed endorsing it. Yeah. So, but remember when Joanne Reed brought in a body language expert to talk about how Bernie Sanders was turtling?
Turtling, yes.
Turtling, yes.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, please.
Yeah,
If he'd
no,
been
wha-
establishment and people talk about the wagging finger, they would have been accused of anti-Semitism, as they should be. I call that gesticulating.
But
You're welcome,
but
everyone. Yeah.
but you know what? You know what? It's working because El Said, look who he's running against. He's McMorrow dropped out. He's running against this freak, this
Right.
this clownish AIPAC freak, and now the latest poll up 7.
Yeah.
She's up 7, and according to DropSite, AIPAC Super PAC is vastly outspending progressive Senate candidate Abdul El Said on the airwaves in Michigan's Democratic primary in the final stretch. Over the next 7 days, the AIPAC affiliated United Democracy Project will spend $4.6 million backing Haley Stevens, Said's establishment rival, while El Said's campaign is set to spend $489,000, according to figures from the firm ADL Pact. Never heard of that. Outside groups have poured more than $41 million into the race, half of it boosting Stevens, a longtime AIPAC ally, or attacking El Sayed, who has made the lobby spending a centerpiece of his campaign. About $2.7 million went to support the Republican Mike Rogers.
10.7 million.
10.7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it.
David Sirota made a good point here. If AIPAC can succeed in buying a Senate race for a candidate this stilted and robotic, then make no mistake about it, they can buy any race anywhere in America for anyone else. I almost think they're trying to prove exactly that in order to send a message. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is giving me it's giving me PTSD flashbacks.
Yes. Well, also remember, like, the argument that I love this argument. Oh, it's not that people said this about Bernie too, right? It's not that we don't like him. It's just that he's not electable. The country just isn't ready to elect a Jew, but it's ready to elect a woman, first of all. But with this case, yeah, she's so electable that AIPAC needs to dump all this money into her. Like, is she so much more palatable? If she were that great a candidate, they probably wouldn't have to do that.
But it's working on these morons. It's working on them. They kind of dishonestly claimed an Obama connection, and you're seeing people going out and voting on that basis. Now you watch this at the top. We talked a little bit about why you might want to here and there support a Democrat. This is an example of why you wouldn't. And watching this as a veteran of the whole Sanders Hillary thing, it's given me flashbacks, and it just shows you gave them an inch and they're going to go the mile because they have no meaningful economic politics. They have no meaningful program. This is all they have. Any opportunity to go back to it. That's how they interpreted Plattner.
Yeah.
So now Russell Dobler here filling in for Jimmy Dore with our friend Katie Halper. Ro Khanna is somebody that has been a lot better. He's been working with Thomas Massey on some important legislation on the Epstein files, and now we'll get into the NDAA. But to his credit, Jeremy Scahill went to a place. I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to go with Ro. Okay, he's perceived as one of the good ones, right?
Yeah. He'll come on the shows. He'll disagree with you. He doesn't get take it personally. Yeah. I'm saying all the things that make people want to have him, be nice to him.
Oh, hang on. You know what? I got to load that in because
Okay.
I ran out of slots. But go on.
No, I was just saying, I'm someone who, I've had Ro Khanna on. I think he's very nice, and he does go on. He's not afraid of going on shows with people he disagrees with. He's like one of the only people who goes on. A lot of people would go on shows, leftist shows, until they get into office, and then they stop. But he has not.
Right. He went on with Nick on Revolutionary Blackout Network. Okay, so this has gone viral, and it calls out the core contradictions in supporting Israel and acknowledging what Israel is. It's kind of one or the other, and Ro wants it both ways.
this about apartheid South Africa? I've heard you talk
Well,
about it.
because I think, because I
give me
do
another
think,
example where you say it's okay to continue any level of support for an openly genocidal society that has mass murdered 80,000 people, more than 300 media workers, has invaded Lebanon, has
This is
bombed
about the Iron
Iran,
Dome.
and you're saying, oh, but we need to protect civilians. This isn't about protecting civilians. The greatest threat to their civilians is their policy. And so I don't understand why you have even one qualified shred of support for a sniper mass murderer masquerading as the only democracy in the Middle East.
well, but I'm not saying that the United States should be supporting the funding for Iron Dome, just so we're clear. I'm saying that we shouldn't be restricting Israel from being able to get the Iron Dome or be able to develop the
Why?
Iron Dome technology. Well,
Why stop there? Everything else you're saying makes so much sense. Why do you stop there? It feels to me like you're trying to have it both ways on this issue. So you can say, well, I actually support defending the Israeli civilians. You're not defending Israeli civilians with that policy. You're defending the sniper's ability to keep killing because it won't face the ultimate accountability, which is a total embargo on all support for an apartheid state.
Yeah, I don't think you have to put at risk. You would agree, there are innocent civilians in Israel, right? Including 20% being Arab Israelis. I mean, I just don't think that you have to put their lives at risk to achieve the ends of stopping the apartheid, stopping the occupation.
Israel puts their lives at risk by waging genocidal wars with the support of a significant portion of its population, and by enabling them by saying, well, the sniper still needs to have his cover, or well, I stop at this thing. What you're saying is that the accountability then doesn't lie on American policy toward Israel. It's sort of something abstract. Well, Israeli civilians could die. Israeli civilians are dying in these attacks because of the apartheid. Palestinians have a right to kill Israeli soldiers, Congressman? On October 7th, when they attacked the military bases in the Gaza envelope, did the Qassam brigades and Surah al-Quds have a right to kill Israeli soldiers? Yes or no? On October 7th, did Palestinians have a right to attack Israeli military bases in the Gaza envelope? Yes or no?
I mean, I think October 7th attack was a terrorist attack, so I don't justify.
Was it a terrorist attack when the first targets that were hit on the morning of October 7th were multiple military bases? Did Palestinian forces have a right to attack those military bases?
I am not for violence again in any way. I mean, I am for making sure that we end the occupation.
Do they have a right to do it, Congressman? Do they have a right to attack Israeli soldiers?
No, I'm not going to say that Hamas had a right to attack Israeli soldiers or kill Israelis. Like I don't think that advances peace or advances Palestinian statehood.
Does Israel have a right to drop a single bomb on Gaza in response to October 7th?
I believe Israel had the right to get people who killed the civilians, but not in the way they went about it, which I've said is genocide.
But the Palestinians don't have a right to attack the very military bases that are running the killing operations on October 6th, 2023, or October 5th, 2023. It's a double standard. You're saying there are ways that Israel should be able to kill Palestinians, but there is never a condition under which Palestinians can attack armed, uniformed soldiers of a force that is still considered an occupying force under international law. I don't make it make sense to me.
Yeah, and just put a button on that. Dave Smith commented, all Jeremy Scahill did was insist on a universal standard for the moral use of violence. The Israel firsters are flipping out because that insistence undermines their entire worldview.
Right.
Yeah, very well said, very succinct. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They're going nuts right now.
Yeah,
if you've seen the discourse around this.
Yes, they are. And you know what's interesting is that people are talking about what Jeremy said as if it's this totally radical, like outside the parameters of acceptable discourse. Now, It's outside of the parameters of acceptable corporate media discourse and acceptable political discourse. But, and the only thing I would have said I think Jeremy did a fantastic job. The only thing I would have said would have been a good reminder is that this is not just like, this is settled law. Like there's a UN resolution, UN General Assembly resolution from 1982, and it affirms, quote, the legitimacy of the struggle of people for independence, territorial integrity, national unity and liberation from colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. So the question really is, now, to be clear, that does not just allow, like, morality aside, right? Just going through what this means, like, you're not allowed to target civilians, and you're not allowed to say, oh, well, these civilians, they're Israeli, so they served in the military in the past, or they will in the future. It also doesn't. They have to be active duty, right? But what is stunning is that, like, people don't know that is an enshrined principle in international humanitarian law, and that what the irony is that, like, I think if Kana had said Israel has no right to bomb anyone in Gaza, including like Hamas, maybe his saying that Hamas has no right to kill any Israeli soldiers would have made more sense. I mean, I still don't think it holds up. It's not the law, right? But just morally, if he was like a total pacifist, like he's kind of framing himself to be, then yeah, you would oppose state violence or extra state violence on both sides, right? But the truth is, it's actually legal what Hamas does if they are attacking soldiers, and it's not legal what Israel does.
Right. And I think that what he really blew the lid off here is the South Africa question. Do you support an apartheid state? Right? Like, if you're acknowledging it's an apartheid state, it's kind of the end of the conversation, right? Like, there is no further conversation about their legitimate right to defend themselves, and certainly for us to be party to supporting that defense. You can't. Roe wants to have it both ways. Now,
how much of this is because, I mean, I don't want to suggest that I'm like justifying it, but I wonder honestly if, like, is it the end of someone's political career if they say that there is, even though it's and this is what's so funny, is that the idiots who are like the Israel firsters they're just outing themselves as not knowing what international humanitarian law says about this, because again, they're just revealing that they've never looked into this at all. It's a very basic thing, right?
Right.
That they are allowed to do this. You are allowed to you are allowed to raise arms and kill occupying soldiers. Now, they may not like that, but that is the established convention. So when people are saying how atrocious this is, or it's illegal, or it's terrorism, it's like, literally, it's not terrorism. It happens to not be terrorism. Now, we can have a whole other discussion over what is terrorism and, what's justified, and double standard, blah, blah, blah. But I do wonder, is it like, do you think that anyone who's acknowledged the fact that it is the law, IHL, just would have no political career left because they would just cut the ad right away?
At Ro Khanna's level of the game, I think they would probably destroy you, which, hey man, I get why people don't at all want to work with the Democratic Party, because you look at Ro Khanna, that's probably about as good as you're gonna get. And it's not nearly good enough. We did just have breaking news right before we went on the air that 100 Democrats came out in support of the Massey Khanna bill to cut funding to Israel. But is that the rotating villain technique? I suspect it is.
And Khanna
that
also
they have
had just
enough
been
to defeat it anyway. Go ahead.
Right. And Khanna just came back from the West Bank, right? And he was actually like detained. So he does do good stuff. I mean, part of me just thinks, like, maybe if we make this, if more and more journalists bring this up, maybe it becomes it can be normalized, this idea. I'm not, and again, he was kind of answering questions about, like, what he thought was better for the Palestinian peace process and for statehood. And that's not really what Jeremy was asking. He was asking if they have the right.
Right. Well, yes. Well, that's why this blew up the way it did, because he got to the heart of the matter. He questioned the basic premise that Israel has a right to exist as an apartheid state.
Right.
He went at that.
Yes. Right.
All right.
And also questioned the premise of defensive versus offensive weapons.
Right.
Because they were talking about the Iron Dome and
Well, yeah, and the entire standard of, well, if Israel has the right to do this, doesn't Hamas have the right to do that? Like these are third rails. They're going to come after Scahill.
They already have.
Hard.
But again, they're such idiots. That's the thing. They're such idiots. Like they don't even know that they're, again, it's kind of like when people mention, and I've not seen any evidence of this, but that the population has increased in Gaza, or so how could it be a genocide? But like all they're saying is, I don't know the definition of genocide, because genocide does not actually require a population to decrease. I mean, we need to just make a sign. I feel like every single time. I can't stand when people say it's not genocide, because it's just such a, I hate like the combination of condescension and rank stupidity, or just lying out of your, like literally the idea that some random Zionist or like contrarian knows more about genocide than like the near consensus of genocide scholars, then what is it? Is it B'Tselem, the Israeli? I'm not trying to elevate Jewish voices over non-Jewish, but like by their game, are they a self-loathing human rights organization? This Jewish Israeli organization that says it's a genocide?
I'm sure, like myself, you have spoken to Zionists, and yes, that is what they will say.
Yeah.
Right. They're capos.
Capos. Yeah. They call me Capo Katie. They think it's very clever alliteration.
Capo.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Okay, finally, I want to get into this a little bit before I let you go. All right, Russell Dobular filling in for Jimmy Dore here with the great Katie Halper, whose documentary Commie Camp is on the verge of being released, right? We're going to see it soon, I hope.
Yeah, I will.
All right, bit of good news. Don't want to leave people totally black-pilled. The Senate voted against the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, 50-46, denying Israel a merger with the U.S. Those 46 who voted in favor should face charges for treason. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the Senate Republicans trying to spin this. Democrats just blocked a defense bill that for more than 60 years has passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. They're denying our men and women in uniform the pay and tools they need to defend this country. Unprecedented and shameful. Power to the People responded, you left out the part where the bill merges the U.S. military with Israel's military, you treasonous bastards. And I got to say, if you go into the comments section of the Senate Republicans' own account, it's pretty much like that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is something the right, the left, everybody can pretty much agree on. Now, it's not over. Thomas Massey here calling out Hakeem Jeffries, who just came out to oppose the Massey-Kana Amendment, cutting all U.S. aid to Israel. Minority Leader Jeffries opposes the Massey-Kana Amendment to cut $3 billion of aid to Israel, but leaves members of his party to vote their conscience. My conscience is clear. I will be voting against using American tax dollars to fund genocide. And Dropsite points out Hakeem Jeffries' decision to oppose an amendment to cut $3.3 billion in U.S. military aid to Israel comes weeks after AIPAC's PAC sent a record $149,300 earmarked contribution to his joint fundraising committee, Sludge reports. It is the largest earmarked disbursement AIPAC's PAC has ever made, and nearly 30 times the standard $5,000 per election limit for a multi-candidate PAC giving directly to one candidate. And Gen X girl here, one of the best researchers in the biz, AIPAC spent $810,990 lobbying the Pentagon to merge the U.S. military with Israel. So I always, whenever I cover this, I want to share the phone number. Call your senators to vote no. This is not over. Not over by a long shot. 202-224-3121. Call your senators. Shut this down. So, Katie, do you think we're going to be able to successfully shut this down? And if we don't, at that point, doesn't it just become dangerous for anyone who wants to speak out to even live in this country? Like, are we looking at going, 1930s? People have to go into exile. Once the Israeli intelligence services are inside the American intelligence services, how are we even going to do things like this? Like, how would you even have these shows? Go ahead.
Well, I want to give Hakeem Jeffries a shout out because a lot of people are bought by AIPAC. What is it? Who Charlemagne the God called him?
AIPAC Shakur.
Yeah, AIPAC Shakur. But not everyone literally channels segregationist George Wallace, the four-term governor of Alabama, who famously said, "Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." Hakeem Jeffries literally said, "Israel tomorrow, Israel now, Israel tomorrow, Israel forever." It was like almost his subconscious was drawing the parallels between supremacy, white supremacy, and Jewish supremacy, the KKK and the settlers, however you want to do it, or the actual just IDF. But I guess the KKK would be the better parallel because they're not official actors of the state. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think that this is scary. I'm not sure. This should make you feel better, actually, Russ. Maybe this will make you feel better. We already have a lot of coordination anyway, so it is worse. And I actually,
what's the difference? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. I had Dennis Kucinich on, and I asked him this question, and I'm trying to remember what the actual difference is. But there is a difference. But it's not. I mean, I don't want to.
Well, he's been going around talking about this a lot. He went on Tucker and talked about this.
Well, before there was Tucker, there was the Katie Halper show.
There was Katie.
He spoke to me before Tucker. I'm sure he got that bump. No, I'm kidding. But and hi Dennis, if you're watching. And Dennis has been on this show a bunch. It's a bit apparently the big one of the big differences is the biotech issue. And it's an official legislative merger. But yeah, I mean, it is, of course, it's scary, and people should be up in arms about it. And it's not that hard to sell to oppose it, right?
No.
Like both sides.
No.
I mean, this is one of the things where Republicans, unless they're, America Firsters, right, should be less than excited about this.
And that is the bright spot. Even, as I said, even on the Senate Republicans page, it was overwhelmingly negative.
It's just too overt. It's too overt.
It's like the flock
you got to
cameras.
sell it. Yeah. You got to. There's an art. There's an art to to merging with a genocidal government, and it's not by officially doing it.
Yes. Yeah. You
Not
have
to
to be
give
a
away the secrets.
little subtlety.
Yeah.
All right, Katie, where do people find you?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So you can find me at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. EST and most Fridays at 12 p.m. I honestly, part of the reason I started doing the additional stream during the daytime was to be able to have Dr. Mohammed Marandi on, the hardest working man in.
See, that's very considerate of you.
Yeah, but right, because I really worry about his health because he's so prolific and he's so brilliant. And he's so generous with his time. So you can definitely check him out frequently. I'm actually going to have Rokan on, I think next week. I'm not sure, but I'm going to have him on.
You're going to play that clip?
I will. Yeah, I will. It'll be also about what he experienced in the West Bank. But yes, I will hold his feet to the fire. I'm not always good at that, I have to admit, especially when I like the people. But I'm getting better. And where else?
Honestly, I feel you, man. Like there's people that I like personally.
Yeah.
That I don't invite on the show.
Because you don't want to.
Because
right.
I couldn't give an honest interview without it being confrontational, and I don't have the heart to do it.
That. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No.
Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. I'm also the co-host of Useful Idiots with Aaron Mate. And there's a Substack for that. So yeah, definitely. I did a great interview. You guys should all have her on with Marta Havrishko, who is a Ukrainian professor and historian who is like just such an important voice about the proxy war and the corruption of the Ukrainian government. She's Ukrainian, she's not, it's not that easy to call her Putin.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, she's really good. Yeah.
All right, Katie.
Thank you so
very
much.
It's been great having you on. Look forward to seeing you back in our fair city.
Yes. And welcome back to this hellscape.
Right. Enjoy your time upstate. See you, Katie. All right. So we will go to some super chats before we change over to Rumble. All right. Let's see what you guys came up with here. There we go. All right. French Laundry. Props for getting. You said Mr. Marandi. I'm gonna give him his honorific, Professor Marandi, on the show. Russ and team. T-Bone. Please talk about what happened to Max Blumenthal. We did mention it a little bit. Love the DD and the JD show very much, T-Bone. Yeah, we tried to get Max on tonight. It was short notice. He's a family man, and it would have been late because I already had Professor Marandi and Katie lined up. MTN Star Studio. The poker tells come from pattern recognition of the disparities between words versus actions. Plandemic, scamdemic, Epstein WEF game plan, ZIB-BEM. I feel like I just got neurolinguistically programmed. MTN Star Studio, many poker games within the chessboard's gambit. Yep. Roger Meadows, in regards to African labor exploitation, by no means was I making it sound as if we were better. I was merely outlining what the trade-offs were. It sounds like I'm walking into the middle of a debate that I wasn't a part of. What also, Roger Meadows, what I said last week about China encroaching on the natural environment wasn't talking about how clean it is for humans, but wildlife habitats destroyed. Now I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm gonna do a big China special on Due Dissidence. I just want to do it right, so it's taken some time to put it together. But they in China's history, what they will argue, because they'll get a lot of this about the Three Gorges Dam. China throughout its history had these horrific floods that the dam stopped. So that is an element of it. Now, people who were displaced from their villages, I will say that you don't see a lot of historic villages in China. They weren't sentimental about it. When they did urban renewal, they literally raised a lot of those villages. Not that none of them exist, but not really where I was. As a result, they build a lot of like ancient village themed kind of shopping areas where it's designed to look like that. But regarding environmental impacts of like the Three Gorges Dam, they would argue, yeah, and China throughout its history for thousands of years would have people's whole villages get wiped out by these floods that the dams put an end to. P. Walker, the USA is the one suffering from two factions, those who have been to Epstein Island and those who haven't. True that. All right, we'll get to the next batch here. Username, the status quo under this hard regime is inherently unethical. Acceleration is the only moral stance when doing nothing results in genocide and apartheid. Yep. C. Calloway just came to say, I could really use a glute massage. That's not an invitation, Russ, but the door is unlocked. Winky face. Don't come over. LOL. JK. Am I making myself clear? What are you suggesting, sir? Are you suggesting that story is a little dodgy? Empire we are. In the eyes of empire, you are either servant, livestock, or enemy. In 1979, Iran went from trusted servant to hated enemy almost overnight. The hatred of the United States towards Iran is structural. Yeah, well, like the hatred of Russia. Roger Meadows, boomers died, thus loosening their grip on the party. Less hands gatekeeping. Well, they're making a pretty good run of it in Michigan. Roger Meadows, the Bernie agenda, who are now losing their hold, is not really because of us, but nature. In a matter of 10 years, 10 million. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that. Mountain Star Studio. I'm assuming MTN stands for Mountain. World as gambling casino. Most games are rigged. Yep. Okay, let's get to the last batch here. Roger Meadow. As we pat ourselves on the back for pushing Dem Party toward Bernie, keep in mind, boomers who acted as gatekeepers for the party to marginalize against, yeah, well, they're showing up in Michigan. Worskill, Katie and Russ, Avengers Assemble. Thank you. No fried bologna. As a woman, I don't identify with other women just because they happen to be women. Some of my best friends are men. That's the best way to be. Username. I judge people by how they behave and how they treat me. That's all I really care about. The status and other people. The status quo under this horrid regime is inherently unethical. Acceleration is the only moral stance for doing nothing, results in genocide and apartheid. Did you pay us twice for that, or did that get copied over twice? Username. Please earmark this donation for the establishment of a pro-feminism, pro-apartheid DNC voting bloc. They really deserve their own lobby to elevate these brave voices. Good one. Okay, that's it. All right, those are all our super chats. We are going to go over to Rumble, do a couple more segments where we will be joined by the Kerp Man. The Kerp Man cometh.